A banker convicted of killing his wife forms a friendship over a quarter century with a hardened convict while maintaining his innocence and trying to remain hopeful through simple compassion. Hope is a good thing. This is Shawshank Redemption. Ooh, I'm so ready for this one. I am very excited. We are talking about Shawshank Redemption, but first we should tell you a little bit about who we are. My name is Phillip. I'm joined, as always, by my faithful companion, good friend, Leonardo Yamas. We typically do a football show, but that is football in the spring around San Antonio. We cover the San Antonio Gunslingers of the Indoor Football League. I'll chuck us back 2 years to the National Arena League. We also covered the San Antonio Brahmas of the United Football League, and we will be dabbling some in San Antonio Caballeros of the International Football Association, the IFA, as we move into the 2025 season. But we're in our off season for all that football stuff, and so we decided to take 10 movies that were made in our lifetime and sit down and talk a little bit about these 10 movies that we love. And today we are on number 5 in our list, as we made our list not the 5th best, just the 5th one we picked. Right. And it is the Shawshank Redemption. How you doing, Leo? Like, you haven't spoke at all. That's my bad. I haven't allowed you to say a word. How you doing, Leo? How are things going?
I am doing great, and you're holding down the fort just fine with your intro. So I'm just stepping back and letting you handle business. But doing good and excited to talk about a great movie.
It is a great movie. Some basics on the movie, just so you know what we're talking about. If you've never seen the Shawshank Redemption before, do not watch this episode. No. Turn this off. Go watch Shawshank Redemption. Come back and catch up with us. If you do not know this movie, we are going to ruin it.
Spoilers
for you. Spoilers. Made in 1994, actually released in 1994, made in 93. Directed by Frank Darabont in his directorial debut. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Written by Frank Darabont, based on a novella by Stephen King. Shawshank Redemption stars Tim Robbins, Morgan Freeman, Bob Gunton, Gil Bellows, William Sattler, Clancy Brown, James Whitmore, also huge in it. Budget of $25 million. We were just talking about this a second ago before we came on. Only made $29 million in the box office at its first release. That's a bomb. Money.
Yeah,
that's not good.
Yeah.
Runtime of 142 minutes, a little long, but I want to talk a little bit about whether that matters or not with a movie that's this that is this kind of movie. Look, I'm not going to bury the lead here. This is my favorite movie. This is my favorite movie of all time, and I'll talk to you a little bit about why. It's, we have these notes that we make as we get ready for the episode, and like, what would you change about the movie? There's not a thing I would change about that. I can't think of anything I would change about this movie.
I have one thing.
It is my favorite.
Pretty minor. Yeah. Great movie.
We'll get to that. I want to talk a little bit about our first contact. The first time we came in contact with this movie. This movie was released in 1994, Leo.
Yep.
I was in high school. I was a freshman in high school.
I was a senior.
My sophomore year of high school, I took journalism. And for some reason that I still don't really understand, on a Friday afternoon when our journalism teacher had nothing for us to do, she turned on Shawshank Redemption, which is not like a movie you should probably show your high school kids. But in any case, class was only an hour long, so we were only able to see the first half of the movie. I go home. It is on TV that weekend, and so I sit down with my parents to watch the movie in its entirety. And I finished it that weekend. When I came back to school on Monday, we wrapped up the movie, watched the rest of the movie, but I had already seen it by that point. Just a very odd way for me to come in contact with it. I had no desire, no interest in seeing it, but it was one of those things forced on me. And like I say, over the last 20 years, 30 years, I'm sorry, it's become probably my favorite movie of all time. How about you, Leo? Where did you come into contact with this movie for the first time?
So I remember specifically when I saw it. I saw it in the movie theater. I remember where I saw it. I saw it in a movie theater that I don't think exists anymore. It was the movie theater that was in the back lot away from 1604 of, even back then, this it was a dying mall, Rolling Oaks Mall in San Antonio. I mean, all malls are, on their, they're limping along right now. They're
Also movie theaters, but
yeah.
yes.
Yes. and that, even back then, 1994, that mall was still, it's just crawling along. What I was doing there, I can't recall. I don't remember why. Like I said earlier, it was my senior year, 94. I would have been a senior in high school. I remember being by myself. I was probably killing time. I want to say maybe I was skipping class. I was I was there. I do know I was by myself. I was killing time because that's the only reason why I would be at Rolling Oaks Mall. It was a place I went to sometimes when I had nothing to do and was just waiting on something. And I went to the theater and just picked a movie that happened to fill the time that I was there. I had a couple hours to kill. And there's this movie called Shawshank Redemption, and they had the movie poster. They always had the movie posters out in front with the little lights, and you'd see the times underneath, displayed underneath the posters. This one fit my time slot. It's literally the only reason I picked it. And I saw, the now famous scene where it's Andy Dufresne after he's in the rain with his hands up, shirtless, and it's a crane shot from above.
Yes.
And I see this shirtless figure that looks like he might have long hair, the rain coming down on him, and I read the word Shawshank, and I'm like, this must be like a Western, an Indian movie, like Cowboys and Indian type movie. Sure, I could get into that. And I mean, obviously I was very, very wrong. But that's when I first saw Shawshank Redemption, one of the few to actually see it in the theater, but it was unplanned.
Yeah, and let's be honest, most of the people that saw this in the theater probably was that way. It's hard. A movie titled The Shawshank Redemption, it tells you nothing. Shawshank was not a prison that anybody knows anything about. That's from the mind of Stephen King. And it does not help that if you do any research into this, even in that, in 94, you're going to find that it's a Stephen King movie. That means something different, I think, in 1994 than it does in 2024, where now we've seen some different facets of Stephen King's storytelling. And we're willing to say, that doesn't mean it's a horror movie, because that's all we knew of Stephen King. It's like, Dead Zone and Tommy Knockers and Firestarter and Carrie. And, that's what had come out from Stephen King up to that point. And so you can't lean on Stephen King's name. It's actors that nobody is going to run to the theater to see. Tim Robbins, Morgan Freeman are not guys in 1994 that were drawing at the box office. It's a title which got pared down a lot. The title of the novella is Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption. They could not do that because then people thought it was a biopic about Rita Hayworth, which would be an interesting biopic. I would love to see somebody do a biopic about Rita Hayworth. But it did not have any juice to get people into the theater to watch it. And despite all of that, it is this really, really incredible, sweeping movie. I don't know I don't know how to put a lot of my feelings about this movie into words. It shocks me that this is from a first time director. Some of the camera work and the cinematography, which granted, that's not all the director. That's your DP, who is a guy that has finally won an Oscar after years and years of putting together amazing movies. His name, I'm gonna find it because he deserves all of the accolades he can get. Deakins is his name. Was a cinematographer and just does the shot at the opening of the movie after we meet Andy Dufresne. We go through his quick court case, which I love the fact that they just truncated all of that and cut it down because that's not really important to why we're here. But that first shot of the prison, of Shawshank Prison, this sweeping sort of helicopter shot over the prison.
It's almost like they had a drone, but we know they didn't back then.
Right. With the music behind it, just incredible, incredible. And there's a lot of really incredible. It looks beautiful. It's one of the most beautifully shot movies that I think have ever existed. We talked some, Leo, about the fact just before we came on that 94 was kind of a murderer's row for
tough year.
Critically acclaimed movies. You had Forrest Gump, which won everything in the Oscars. Tom Hanks wins an Oscar. It wins Best Picture. It wins Best Director, I believe. Now we look back on Forrest Gump and we think of it as a little goofy or maybe even problematic. Not the case in 1994. In 1994, it was a great movie. And if you still consider Forrest Gump a great movie, I'm not going to argue with you. I love Forrest Gump. I think it's a solid movie. I think it's got a lot of heart and a lot of themes, and I think it's a really good movie. Pulp Fiction also comes out not just that year, but the same weekend as Shawshank Redemption, which you talked about a little bit before, that you read that got blamed, that gets some of the blame for Shawshank doing as poorly as it did.
Yeah, everybody went to go see Pulp Fiction. And the other thing was the title itself, which was, nobody knew, just like me. Anybody who read that title, nobody could relate to that and associate it with anything. Now, a tidbit on the title that you mentioned earlier, since you said it was, Stephen King's novella. It was originally titled Rita Hayworth in the Shawshank Redemption. There was actually an agent for, and it only said in the article, a famous supermodel, didn't give the name, who actually called Darabont and said, she read the script. It's a great script, and we think she's the perfect person to play Rita Hayworth, which obviously just exposed the lie. Because if had read the script, all right, he would have known Rita Hayworth was a poster in the movie.
Too funny. I am, for those of you that don't know, I'm a huge Stephen King fan. So I know that this novella was released in different seasons, 4 really, really amazing novellas all put together into one volume. The Body, which would become the incredible Rob Reiner movie Stand By Me, Rita Hayworth and Shawshank Redemption, and Apt Pupil, all contained within that collection. Also one called The Breathing Method, a novella called The Breathing Method. But those 3 movies, and you can say what you want to about Apt Pupil. Bryan Singer is who he is, and a lot of people don't like him anymore. Kind of a Kevin Spacey sort of guy. Apt Pupil is a really well done movie, and Gandalf playing a Nazi, kind of fun. Kind of an interesting turn with Ian McKellen playing the retired or in hiding Nazi sort of general.
I'm gonna have to watch that. I've never seen it.
It's good. It's good. Brad Renfro in it, a young actor that I know you'll recognize. David Schwimmer plays a very weird kind of pop-up part in it that did not exist in the book. It's worth watching. It's worth watching. Bryan Singer, first couple of X-Men movies he made. Usual Suspects. He's a pretty good storyteller. He is a problematic person, but he's a pretty good storyteller. And so, yeah, I would highly recommend at least a watch for apt people, even if it doesn't become one of your favorite movies. And then, of course, Stand By Me comes out of that collection as well. The Body.
Fantastic movie.
Just an incredible movie, incredible story, the novella. Let's talk a little bit more about what makes this movie, Shawshank Redemption, great. This is one of the things that we want to settle on, and I think this is going to be the majority of our conversation because there's so much in this particular movie that just makes it great. And the place I would start, Leo, is there are times you go to a movie and you have a really good time. You really enjoy it. You like what you see. You have a fun experience or a great experience, but you come out and you go, I'm not sure what that was trying to say. Because film is art, and in its most pure form, it's saying something. It may not be saying something you agree with, and it may not be saying something well, but all film, all art is saying something. I don't think that's a problem with this movie. I think there are two major themes in this movie, and it says them loud and clear. One is the idea of becoming institutionalized. Becoming stuck in a rut or stuck in a place where you cannot imagine your life outside of the walls that you're in. This is the first half of the movie, all the way up through Brooks Hadlin, which I want to talk a little bit about in a few minutes. I think this idea of being institutionalized is kind of the theme for the first half of this movie. And then it gives way to the major theme of the movie, which I've put on all our promotional stuff for this episode, and that is hope. Hope is kind of the point of the movie. If you walk out of this movie with anything other than a hopeful sort of feeling, I think you missed it. I think you missed what this movie is about. And I don't know that there are a lot of movies that I've seen that so clearly and completely tell you what their themes are without just beating it. Like, I don't feel like this browbeat me with these sort of themes, but they're there, and it's very clear what it's saying, and it's very clear of how, what it wants you to feel, what it wants you to think.
Yeah, I agree. And the whole sentiment of I see the two things, like being at that time. I mean, you and I were both young. It's the concept of institutionalization. To me, that was a new concept, a foreign concept before this movie. Like, it's not something I had ever thought about or pondered on, or anything that had any part in my life. So to see that in the movie, it was kind of like got you thinking, like, yeah, I guess I could see how that could happen to someone for being in a place for so long, where you think, even though they're introduced into a better situation, a place that they could actually do something more with themselves, and it's the complete opposite for them because of how they've become accustomed to a certain way of life. That's not something a teenager has even thought of, processed.
Well, because so we have always lived in this world, whether it's through the movies and television or just through our own sense of feeling and independence. If you go to prison, if you go to jail, the one thing you want to do is get out.
Yeah.
Whether that's being released or proving your innocence or escaping. The point of every prison movie is getting out. We have to, there's a great joke about that here in this movie when they're talking about the Count of Monte Cristo. And Andy Dufresne says, you'll like that. It's about a prison break. And Red says, then we should put that in instructional books, right? I mean, so much of our understanding of prison, which is where all these guys are, is they want out. Everybody wants out of prison. And so to have to assent to this idea that, no, there are some people that don't. want out of prison. That is their world. They are someone there. They are important. Brooks Hadlin, the character of Brooks Hadlin, which is an incredible way to tell the story, tell the idea, the theme of institutionalization. This guy that gets out into the world and just all he can think about is ways to get sent back home. Back home. Prison is back home. Because he's been there 50 years of his life and he doesn't know anything else. And Brooks Hadlin, I want to talk a little bit more about this when we talk about one of my other points later, but completely an invention for the film. Like the character exists in the novella, but it is not all of his story is created by Darabont for the film. Just an incredible job by Darabont to kind of take his theme that he wanted to bring out and just kind of imbibe it in this character and then inject it into the movie in such a way. I really love that.
Yeah, and then that's another part of that is how much things change from when you're brought in and sheltered to when you're out. I thought that was really interesting too, with Brooks coming out and he makes a reference in the cars and how much cars are how different they are, and it's a strange world, and he's afraid. I mean, that's his letter. I don't want to be afraid anymore, and I've decided not to stay.
Yeah. So this is as good a place as any to share this particular story. I love this movie, but I haven't always loved this movie. I've always liked this movie. I've always appreciated this movie. But I did not love this movie until I recognized something that happened with my father the first time we watched this movie. That weekend, when I came home and we caught the movie and we watched it all in its entirety, I sat there with my parents and watched the movie. My father is not an emotional guy, and certainly not when it comes to movies. He'll laugh at funny movies, like, you put on The Naked Gun or you put on a funny movie, Support Your Local Sheriff with James Garner. He loves that movie. You put that on, he likes it. He laughs. He enjoys that movie. But to have an emotional response to a movie is just not something my dad does. It's not who he is. In this movie, as we're watching this movie, we watch what happens with Brooks. Brooks carves his name in the beam there in his room and then hangs himself because he can't stand the idea of living outside of the cell. At the end of the movie, Red goes through the same sort of moments, the same sort of plot beats as Brooks. And there is a moment after he's gone to the field, he's come back to his room and he is standing looking up at that same beam where Brooks has carved his name, and he opens his pocket knife and looks up at it. And my father, who does not have emotional reactions to the movie, goes, "Oh no." He was emotionally invested in this movie enough to be afraid of what was happening next to this character that he had grown with some sort of a type. You're right. James Palmer says you think that Red is doing the same thing. And that's what Darabont is getting you to. That's where Darabont is taking you. And he took my father there, and my father had grown attached to this character in such a way that he had a reaction, a true, I don't even know if he remembers that, but 30 years later, I remember that. And for this story to be told well enough to draw a reaction out of my father, it means something to me now that it probably didn't when I was 15 or 14 or whatever that was, 15. The theme of hope, so beautifully done. Leo, I'm sure you read this. We were both researching this movie, but the movie was not supposed to end on the beach in Zihuatanejo.
Right.
The movie was supposed to end on the bus with Red looking out the window and saying, "I hope. I hope." That is the point of the movie, is that hope exists. And so Darabont did not feel like it needed this button on the end of it. Hey, Mo. Mo Ferrante checking in with us. James Palmer on here too. Darabont didn't feel like it needed this button of them on the beach together interacting. They took it through some test audiences, which is what you do with movies, and everybody's like, I loved it. It was great. It'd be really nice if we could see them together one more time. And so Darabont gets some pressure from the studio, and they say, come on, film it, watch it, put it in the film, and if you don't like it, we won't make you keep it. We'll take it out. Darabont creates that moment on a beach in the Caribbean, and with Tim Robbins and Morgan Freeman. Actually, you can even tell they both kind of look a little different than they do anywhere else in the movie, which you accept because they're out and they're free men, and so they don't look like they looked in the prison. Darabont creates the moment, puts it on the end of his film, and he goes, "You're right. That's better. That gives a certain amount of closure." But yes, it was really just supposed to end on this note of hope. I hope.
Yeah. So speaking to that, I very clearly remember seeing that scene for the first time, and even the last time I watched it just a couple of days ago, and Morgan Freeman on the bus and stating that line, "I hope to see my friend one more time. I hope." And I remember the first time I saw it, I thought, this is the end. Like that was an ending. That was a classic line to end a movie on. And then you get that additional scene. And I think that scene is important. And I think I understand why the test audiences wanted that sense of satisfaction, closure, like you said, because there's still that element of he's on the run. There's still that element of you don't get to see with your own eyes that Red gets reunited with his friend Andy. And you really want that to happen because this movie, when you think about it, from start all the way up until that last scene is filled with tragic events, tragedy. I mean, the how Andy ends up in prison, a tragic event, obviously. All these guys have tragic stories of their own. You have a glimmer of hope in the middle. I don't know if I'm getting ahead of ourselves where with Tommy, and something might develop here, and there's a hope that maybe something could happen, and that gets shot down, literally
snuffed out.
Yes,
like a candle, man. You get this. Oh, this is where we're going. We're going to prove Andy's innocent and he's going to be a free man. And then that just crashes down almost immediately on you. And you're like, but that's not where I thought we were going. What do you mean he's in the hole? And then Tommy gets shot and all of these things. And by the way, Tommy being shot, another invention for the screenplay. Not the way it happens in the book. Tommy just gets transferred to a medium security or a light security prison and transferred away so that this is better.
Yes.
I want to talk a little bit about the idea of adaptation because I have a real issue with fans of fiction. And I am a fan of fiction, but I have I like to fight against people who are like me. The fans that bother me the most in the NFL, Cowboys fans. I am a Cowboy fan, but Cowboys fans drive me crazy. I am a fan of fiction, just a
true statement for everybody, though. The fan.
Fair enough. Not to take too much of a detour, but all those Cowboy fans all season long that are like, we're overpaying CD and Dak. Well, guess what? Now they're both injured. You get to see how good it would have been without them. You think you're overpaying them. Let's see how good we are now. Anyway, back to the Shawshank Redemption. One of the other things that makes this film great, Leo, is the use of voiceover. Voiceover is often maligned. It is often one of those things that people tell you should never put in a film. It's lazy. It's lazy storytelling. It can be. It can be a crutch that you lean on. It is not in this case.
No.
Part of that is simply because it's Morgan Freeman.
Yeah. I mean, who else do you want a voiceover? If you have a voiceover, it's got to be Morgan Freeman, right? Like
Right.
you voice over
Morgan
something
Freeman,
in your head, it's in Morgan
James
Freeman's
Earl
voice.
Jones could be one that would, I would allow to just like do a voiceover of my life. Yeah, Morgan Freeman, just excellent. But this use of voiceover is done really well, and it shifts. There's another movie we're going to cover later in this experiment that also leans heavily into voiceover.
Mm-hmm.
And it gets a really hard time because the voiceover shifts halfway through the movie for like 10 minutes. And it's a big sticking point for a lot of people of like, you just changed the perspective of the narrative and you screwed this whole thing up because I've heard a lot of people complain about that particular movie. We'll talk about it here in a few months, here in about a month, I think. But this does that too, because Brooks' letter is done in voiceover and it is a shift in the tone. James Palmer agreeing, saying Morgan Freeman, James Earl Jones, top two voiceovers. Absolutely. This voiceover is not used sparingly. It runs throughout the whole movie. It runs almost wall to wall. Your story is moved along a lot through voiceover. I think it has to be, because we just talked about where it came from. It's a novel. The novella, is told from Red's perspective. In order to capture that same sort of tone, voiceover is almost your only option.
Yeah, I agree, and obviously, Darabont thought so too, because he actually brought Morgan Freeman in to do the voiceover before they even started filming. Like all that was recorded ahead of time.
Do you have more of that story?
I do. It took I think 90 minutes in total.
First time through, one take, 90 minutes, knocked it out.
Yep. Because Morgan Freeman was so great at it. And then he would play the voiceover while actually filming, while they were doing the scenes, to kind of pace it according to Morgan Freeman's voiceover.
Absolutely.
But then he realized that wasn't working for him, because there was some sort of background noise in the voiceover that he could not get out.
Yep.
And it was
in the audio.
Hiss. Yep. And it annoyed him and probably others, and he needed to get that out of there. So he brought Morgan Freeman back in to redo the voiceover, and it took much longer than 19 minutes.
Took 3 weeks.
3 weeks. Yeah.
Took 3 weeks to redo the voiceover that he did in 90 minutes the first time he recorded it.
Yeah, I bet Morgan was beside himself with that. Frustrated.
He getting a paycheck. It's okay. That's what he gets paid for. One of the other things that I have on my list that makes this movie great is cinematography. We've talked a little bit about that crane shot right in the beginning as you come up over not a crane shot. It's actually a helicopter shot as you come up over the prison. There is the crane shot when they're listening to Andy puts the music on, and you've got everybody standing in the yard. There's a crane shot there of all the convicts standing in the yard listening to the music. But the shot that really just, I think, might be one of my favorite shots of all time in any movie whatsoever is the reveal of the poster, pulling the poster off, descending down with Warden Norton and Byron Hadley and Morgan Freeman both leaning in to the hole. Just an amazing moment in cinema, in movies. Just an incredibly cathartic sort of moment. You don't know where Andy is. You don't know where he's gone. You know he's not here. And then he throws the rock and it hits the poster and the hollow sound, and you hear it go to, and he puts his finger in and pulls it out, and that shot of him just dumbfounded, looking down this hole and then the other two leaning in. Just an incredible shot. Lots of ways you can tell story. Like you could shoot that a lot of ways. The way they shot it is just incredible.
Yeah, I really like that scene. As James Palmer says, didn't the warden throw a chess piece that, as he in frustration, he throws it and it busts through the poster and makes a hole, and that's how he gets the reveal. So what I love about that scene, I agree with you in the cinematography and the whole, following the path down the route that he escaped. But what I love about that scene that strikes me every time I see the movie, and I remember it striking me the very first time I saw it in that theater years and years ago, was because I don't think you see it any other time in the movie. I could be wrong, but it never drew my attention outside of this scene, is the picture of Albert Einstein up on the wall, perfectly centered between the warden and Hadley, where they're standing there trying to figure out what's going on. And it's that famous picture of Einstein sticking his tongue out, kind of like poking fun. And it's just like, I outsmarted all of you. And it's like the big reveal. And it's just right in center shot is Albert Einstein up high on the wall. It's one of the pictures that Andy had in his cell. And it's just kind of like mocking you. Like, you didn't see this coming, and it's because I outsmarted all of you this whole time, and that's what it meant to me.
I never noticed that. I never picked that up. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Great performances all the way through. We haven't talked about it yet. We're going to get into some like what if kind of moments a little later, but Tim Robbins, the best performance of his career to date. I can't think of anything. I've seen him in a lot of things. He's great as Nuke Lelouch, and Arlington Road is okay, and Hudsucker Proxy is really good, but nothing even close to Andy Dufresne. Just the way he plays this quiet. I love the fact that he buttons his prison shirt all the way up to the neck. This is a man that, I don't know, Leo, you're like me. I'm sure when you have to wear a tie, there's a moment when no longer we have to wear the tie and this button gets undone.
Boom!
Whatever it takes, this button is coming undone. That is not who Andy Dufresne is. Andy Dufresne is more comfortable being buttoned up. And he's a banker and a good one.
So let me tell you something about that personality and that performance by Tim Robbins, and just an element of this movie that makes me really enjoy this movie the first time and every other time I've seen it since. And there have been multiple times I've watched this movie.
Sure.
Because it's so great. But if I could single out one single thing, it's the fact that when you watch this movie the first time and you're watching Andy Dufresne and you're seeing that button up to the top personality, that stoic, where he's very still, looking forward, no expression on his face at a lot of times, you believe it because that's who Andy Dufresne is. You see it on his face and you see him just being that not very emotional person at, when someone else would be, sweating or have some element on their face of some sort of emotion. And the scenes that I'm thinking about are specifically scenes that involve the warden and things where after the fact, when you've seen it already and know how it ends and know the reveal, and you watch it a second time and you go back knowing what you know, there are times where you're like, he could have got caught there. Like this is a moment where he was sweating it, especially when they go and toss the cells, and it was a ruse because it was when Warden Norton just wanted to meet Dufresne, and Red, even in the narration, says he was just sizing him up. When he comes in and goes there, he takes the Bible from him, and we know later on the rock hammer's in that Bible. He mentions that he doesn't approve of the poster. Lots of little things where Andy Dufresne is standing there going, "Please God, don't move that poster. Please God, don't pull the poster down. Please God, don't open my Bible.
Bible.
Don't look in the Bible. Don't look at." And he's quoting scripture, and he's like, "You can, if you go back and watch it a second time and look at his face, you see a totally different performance. Knowing what it's still there. You see Andy Dufresne nervous. You see Andy Dufresne handling and processing what's happening, and you see in his face, I really can't let him look in this Bible. I really don't want him to look behind that poster." Stuff that you never saw before. It was just Andy Dufresne being stoic and straight and looking forward and not showing emotion. But if you watch it a second, third, fourth, fifth time and look at the little facial cues, it's there. And Tim Robbins knew exactly what the hell he was doing when he did that. And that's just phenomenal. Great
and
stuff.
It's a character that's written well, because even at the very beginning, the very first thing I think the first thing you learn about Andy's character is when he is standing before the judge. He has been found guilty by the jury, and the judge is going to sentence him, and he says, "I find you to be an icy and remorseless man." Mm-hmm. Well, now that we know, after you go through the movie, he is innocent. What would make you seem icy and remorseless? No emotion. The emotion he is devoid of emotion. That is just not who he is. I think you're right. I think I don't know that anybody else, and we'll talk about some of the others that get mentioned who could have been Andy Dufresne. I don't think anybody else can play him as well as, and again, Tim Robbins is not, I don't want to bag on the guy. He's a good actor, but he's not just like a master actor, just an amazing, whatever you put him in, he's absolutely excellent. He's good. But he's not just, not Tom Hanks. He's not, one of those kind of guys.
This movie made his career. I mean, he was relatively unknown to that point.
Morgan Freeman, we've already mentioned his voiceover work, but just his acting. We talked a lot about Morgan Freeman last time we did an episode when we had him in Seven. Morgan Freeman is an incredible actor. He is just, he is incredible at what he does. I love the joy that he can show at moments of this. The chuckle and the smile when Andy asks him why they call him Red, and says, "I guess because I'm Irish," it's incredible. His laugh when Andy and he are in the library putting away books and they're talking about the schemes of the warden, and Andy says, outside I was clean, I was straight as an arrow. I had to go to prison
to become a criminal,
become a crook.
Crook, yeah.
And Red laughs, just joyful, just some joyful kind of moments from a man who does not have a lot of joy in his life. He is devoid of hope. That's very clear. That the redemption here, I think there's a case to be made that the Shawshank Redemption is Andy being redeemed, but Andy was always innocent. Like, he was guilty of some other things, but he was always innocent of murder. I think the redemption here is really Red, who is institutionalized and hopes at the end of the movie. The redemption is Red's redemption, not Andy's. Andy's exists, but not on the same level that Red, who goes from institutionalized, the first half of the movie, that's the theme, to this idea of hope, the theme in the second half. This is about Red's movement, not so much about Andy's movement.
And that's why Red is the narrator, because this is his redemption, even though you don't know it until you get to the end and kind of think about it and realize it. Because throughout the movie, I mean, he has discussions with Andy where he's like, why have hope? Hope is a dangerous thing. And they talk about the music, and he asks Red about music, and he said, well, I used to play a mean harmonica, but not much use for it here. And he's like, what are you talking about? This is where you need it most. It's where they can't get to, it's yours. Something they can't get to, they can't take away. And he learns all this and kind of sees the example of his friend Andy. And that was a question that I had, like, at what point do you think he changes his outlook? Because that's the one thing where I'm not certain. I think maybe it's when Andy escapes. That was the thing that pushed him over, but I don't know. I don't know definitively that that's the moment when he accepts that there's hope. But because up until very late in the movie, that music discussion is late in the film.
It is.
And it's part of the reason why in that scene you talked about your dad, where you still have doubts in your head and you think he may follow down the road that Brooks went. And you really
that's what I was
believe
going to
that
say
could
is,
happen.
I'm not sure that isn't the last thing that happens in this movie as far as arc or movement, is his relinquishing his objection to the idea of hope is kind of the last thing that happens in this movie, because it is a long road for Red up to that point. I think he has given up even when Andy gets away. I love the voiceover when Andy is free, and he talks about them sitting around and talking about Andy and all of the stories that they share, and he waxes poetic for 2 or 3 paragraphs worth of text, and then he stops and says, I guess I just miss my friend.
Yeah.
I love this moment of, I've tried to put all of these things into words so that I can make you understand, but really it's just the fact that I miss my friend. Incredible writing. That is probably a Stephen King turn. I did not make it that. I've been listening to the novella. I did not make it that far in the novella, but my guess is that is probably a Stephen King turn, just as much as I know about him. But that is, I love that moment where he goes through all of these waxing poetic about, you have to let them go, and part of you knows that they were never meant to be caged in the first place. And I mean, he goes on, and then he says, I guess I just miss my friend. Like, he just kind of just distills it all down for you. A couple of other performances I feel like we have to mention. Clancy Brown as Captain Hadley, the Byron Hadley.
Yep.
A really nice, really great guy who had trouble playing this character because he was so awful and evil.
Yeah.
Until somebody, I don't remember who it was. I just heard this story today. I wish I could relate it better. But somebody pulled him aside and said, he's a cartoon. And he said, what do you mean? I don't understand what you mean by that. And he goes, all of this is being told through the perspective of a prisoner. So there is no nuance. There is no good within Byron Hadley, because Byron Hadley is just evil to the prisoners. They don't see him any other way. There is no nuance of, well, but he's just trying to make a living for his family. There's none of that. They don't see him that way. And that's the perspective that we're getting on this character. And Clancy Brown went, okay, then I can just be straight evil. I can just be a terrible person. Now I get it. Now I understand how I can just, because part of you when you're acting is like, no, there has to be I can't just be a bad guy to be a bad guy. There has to be some sort of motivation for me to be the bad guy. I have to have some sort of motivation. And I don't really see that here. Clancy Brown does an incredible job. One of probably the thing he's known most for, Shawshank Redemption and Byron Hadley. And I love the moment at the end where it talks about when they put him in handcuffs, he cried like a little girl. There is a trope in Stephen King literature and Stephen King's novels of the bully. There's always a bully in Stephen King. It is unconventional in this particular story, and there are some other people that also fit into the trope, but Byron Hadley is the bully. He is just another one of Stephen King's bullies. And when he's finally brought to task, he cries like a little girl. He's not tough. He's not mean. He's not exceptionally strong or powerful. He's just a bully. And he cries like a little girl when he finally gets caught. Love it. I love that. Others, William Sadler. I like William Sadler. You have seen him all over the place and didn't even. He's almost one of those that guys. Oh, that's that guy.
Yeah.
Die Hard 2. He shows up all the time in just bit parts and character parts. But I love William Sadler, and I think this is one of his best performances that I think I've ever seen him in. He is. I love the moment where Brooks grabs him and is going to cut his throat.
Yeah.
Stay in prison. He's going to cut his throat.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of that, once they talk Brooks down, he is so hurt that nobody cares about him. They're all trying to take care of Brooks, and he's like, I'm the one that almost got my throat cut. Why are y'all not all sympathizing with me? I love it. I love it. Also, his turn, the very beginning of the movie when they're fishing, first thing you see in the prison, that first night in prison.
Yep.
He is goading the fat boy.
Yeah.
He gets him to cry. He's all in on tormenting this person. But when Hadley shows up,
then
he immediately starts whispering under his breath, "Shut up, man. Shut up. This has become real now."
Yeah.
And that moment, that turn communicates so much to the audience.
Mm-hmm.
And William Sadler does a great job with that. The other performance that I just can't let go without mentioning is James Whitmore as Brooks Hadlin. Just an incredible performance for a guy that shows up in like 12 or 15 minutes of a 2-hour movie. He is the heart and soul of the movie. If you scooped his part out, this movie is not what it is.
Right.
He is just incredible, and James Whitmore just does it absolutely amazing. From the moment you see him on screen, "Are you going to eat that?" Is his first line about the maggot in the food, taking care of Jake and taking care of his bird and all of the things, and then of course ending with that letter and Brooks hanging himself there in the halfway house. Just the heart and soul of the movie, and James Whitmore just pitch perfect all the way through that part.
Yeah, I mean, he's what brings home that theme of institutionalization, so that you understand what it means, and he does it perfectly. It's a great performance. You see you see an example of someone who's in a situation and making the best life that he can, and kind of just resigned to find peace and find happiness in little things like the Jake and his library, and distributing the books. He's doesn't show any sign of violence or the person that he used to be. He's obviously been as a what's the word in Morgan Freeman and Reds, when he's going to his hearing for probation, rehabilitated. I mean, he's obviously rehabilitated in that sense. And as Red says, it's a BS word that you guys make up. But yeah, heartbreaking end to his story, but it kind of drives that home.
I love the juxtaposition of the idea, and it's all Red. It's Red and his friends as they're sitting there after they've read Brooks's letter. They're talking about Brooks's demise. He should have died in here, but this is where the theme of institutionalized becomes textual. This is where Red really just kind of lays out this theme of being institutionalized. And I love the juxtaposition of the idea of, in here, he's an important man. He's an educated man. Out there, he's nothing. Probably couldn't even get a library card. He runs the library in the prison. Out there, he probably can't even borrow books from the library. That's institutionalized. That is, if you have trouble wrapping your mind around a person that wants to stay in prison, that should help you get there. Of, oh, in here he's somebody, out there he's nobody. He means nothing to anybody. Can't even get a library card. Just a great juxtaposition. James Whitmore, absolutely, does an incredible job with it. The only other thing I have on my list of what makes this film great, I know this is a long section, but it's a great film. There's a lot that makes it great, is the art of adaptation. We've talked several times about the fact that this is based on a novella. It's a novella I've read. It's a novella I've listened to. I'm in the midst of listening to it again. But what's great about it, Leo, is it is not exactly like the book. The movie is not exactly like the book. You know why? Because books and movies are different.
Different, not the same.
And you have to learn. There are good adaptions and there are bad adaptions. But I'll tell you, let me dust up my soapbox here and climb up on this soapbox for a second. I am so tired of fiction fans of literature and fiction saying, I just want you to do it exactly like it is in the book. No, you don't. You are a liar. You want proof? Go watch The Shining. Yeah, that's right. The 1980 Stanley Kubrick Shining. It is the same basic material as the novel. Then go watch the 1993 miniseries, The Shining, that Stephen King made and wrote the teleplay for right off of his novel. And you come back and tell me that that is better than Stanley Kubrick's take on The Shining. I will call you a liar to your face. The adaptation of The Shining is not anything like the book. It is the same source material. It is good. It is incredible. It is great. It is one of the best films ever put on film. I'm not even a huge Stanley Kubrick fan, but I really like The Shining, the movie and the novel from Stephen King. They can both be great and be different. Stop saying you want it to be just like the movie or just like the book. You don't. You don't know what you're asking for. It does not work that way. There are not hundreds, but there are several major changes here in the Shawshank Redemption, and every one of them that I've run across, I go, better. There are like 4 wardens in the novel. We have one in the movie. Better. Byron Hadley is not the captain of the guard, and he does not even last the whole novella. He is just a guard that kind of floats in and floats out of the story. Better. The way that Darabont put it together in the movie. Brooks Hadlin is a character that gets less than a paragraph's worth of a story when he gets an entire interlude here and crystallizes the theme of the movie, one of the themes of the movie. Better. Stop saying it's okay to not like an adaptation. It's okay to go, I didn't like what they did with it. But stop saying, why can't they just do it like the movie? Lord of the Rings is nothing like Lord of the Rings. Not nothing like. Lord of the Rings is not a strict adaptation of Lord of the Rings.
Right.
And that's okay. It's good. It's better.
Yep. For the purists that would argue that, that shouldn't be. I mean, how can you argue when the writer himself loves the adaptation so much that, on this case, Stephen King, he took a $5,000 check. What? You're doing
to be fair, Stephen King has thumbs up to a lot of crappy adaptions of his work.
Oh, true.
He really likes a lot of stuff that is not good at all. I don't know that we can put Stephen King as like he's a good judge of adaptions of his work.
This is taking it to another level when you have the check in your wallet and you think so much of it that you send it back to the guy in a frame and say thanks.
Right.
And
in case you need bail money.
Yeah. That speaks volumes, I think, how much he liked the adaptation. And if the writer can appreciate an adaptation of his own work, then you as a reader, come on, you can't argue that it's not right and it shouldn't be.
But the thing is, they're two separate mediums, and so
Yeah.
what works in a book well will not work in a movie well. In the same way that novelizations of movies are terrible. Have you ever read any of those, Leo? Have you ever gone back and I remember when Volcano, which was right around 1994, by the way, came out. I did not get a chance to go see the movie as soon as it came out, but I thought the idea was really great, and so I read the novelization of it. Those are terrible. You want to know why? Because it's two different mediums. And what works on the screen doesn't work on the page, and vice versa. Stop with this, people. Stop with this whole, oh no. There's a meme. You'll see it. Now that I mention it, it'll pop up on your Facebook or on your Instagram that says, what I want from an adaptation. Page 1 on the screen. Flip to page 2. Do what it says on the screen. You don't want that. You don't want Harry Potter would have to be like 8 hours an episode, 8 hours a book to make that work. You don't want that. You don't want what you're wrong. You're just straight wrong. And this is the art of the adaptation. If you ever dive in deeply, Jaws does this really well. Jaws, the book, and the Jurassic Park is another one. Steven Spielberg, really good at this. The adaptation is important. You can have bad adaptations of things. I'm not saying everything that was adapted is great because it's on the screen instead of on the page. You can have really terrible adaptations of things. There's lots of that out there. But you don't want the adaptation to just be a strict, pure, what was in the book, what is on the screen, because it just doesn't work like that. They're two different mediums. Stop that. And this is a great example of really good adaptation of the work. Every major change that's made makes it better. There are bad adaptations of movies into movies. I've been watching the despecialized Star Wars trilogy, the original trilogy without the special edition. There are a couple of changes that are good, but on a whole, George Lucas screwed up his own movies by adapting them for a different time. It did not work well. So that's what else is great about this. You got anything else on your list of what's great about this movie, Leo?
Well, I do. It's kind of more for me though, for people that saw this movie when they were young, and as they mature and rewatch the movie, something that I always found pretty cool is, I mean, and I might just be outing myself as being kind of ignorant as a young person, but the probation hearings for Red, I watched those, and I remember watching as a young person and thinking, he went in there and said exactly what he should, presented himself exactly the way he did, and they're just mean because, or they just didn't want to let him out for whatever reason,
Right.
Maybe because, he's a black man, a convict, and he's, committed this terrible crime, and, they don't believe that he'll ever be, better. He'll either be a better person. He can never be something different. And he goes through that repeatedly through the movie. And it's almost like you could take the lines from the first one and put it in the second one, and it's almost the same. But as a young person watching that, you don't see anything wrong with the way he's presenting himself. You don't see any reason why, he did a good job of presenting himself. He's just not being listened to.
Yeah, they're just being mean.
Yeah. And then you see the last one. And by the way, I did read Morgan Freeman said that over his career, he thought that scene, that final hearing, was his best bit of acting in his career that he ever did.
Fair enough. It's really good.
Yeah.
Really good.
And he goes on this rant and he talks about how, rehabilitation be a made up word, and how if he could just grab his younger self and speak to him and knock some sense to him, he wish he could, but that can't be. And, stamp your papers or whatever, because, frankly, I don't care. He didn't say those words, but, that's kind of what he's doing, but he's like yelling, and he's not being presenting the way you would think you want to present to yourself for something that's important, for someone that has control over something very important in your life. And then he gets approved. And as a young person, I was watching that, and like I remember thinking like, okay, I was happy that they approved him, but I didn't understand why.
Right.
I didn't understand at the time. I didn't understand why they approved him. Because to me, all he did was come in and was angry and yelled and said, "Yeah, you're never going to let me out. So what's the point?" And then for some unknown reason, they approved it at that point. I remember thinking that, like thinking, he got the right group of people this time, and it wasn't in the words that he said or how he said it. And as you mature and grow older and kind of learn uh the lessons of life, at least in my experience, you go back and you rewatch that and it takes a whole different meaning. I watched the first probation hearings, and it's almost like he's just reciting. He's not really being genuine. He's not making a real case for himself, and he's being denied because they see through it. They see through his performance. And then in the end, it's his true self. And they recognize that, and they see how he really regrets. He's gotten to the point where it's pushed him so far. His sentence has pushed him so far that he's hopeless, and he knows it's just like it's too late for him to do anything anyway. So he just doesn't care anymore. And now they're like, oh well, he's definitely not a threat anymore. We can let him out. And there, that whole scene took more meaning to me as an older, wiser person than it did as a high schooler. And that's something that I really love about the movie. But that could have just been me. I could have just been an idiot when I was a kid.
He is reading a prepared statement. In the very first one, he is reciting a prepared statement. In the second one, 10 years later, he is reciting the same statement, but he doesn't even believe it anymore. Like, this comes through in Morgan Freeman's performance, really, really clear of, I know this is what I'm supposed to say. Then I know what this is supposed to say, but it won't matter. And then the third one is, I don't care what I'm supposed to say. I will just say what is true, what is real, what is honest. And that won't get me anywhere, but that's okay because it's honest, it's real. And that is what eventually, by the way, there's a lot of people that dive into these and say, hey, if you watch the parole boards, they get progressively more liberal. That's why he's released. I think you're wrong. I think a reading of this movie that way is wrong. They point to the fact that the women increase on the parole board each time he goes before them. And the final time he has a prominent woman on the parole board, and that means that it's more liberal, and that's why he's released. I don't buy that reading of these particular scenes at all. Yeah. I think it is truly a matter of Red being real, being honest with the parole board, not giving them a prepared statement. I think you're right.
Yep.
Anything else that is great about the movie? What would you change about this movie? I wouldn't change anything. I'm not sure there's a single thing I would change about this movie. You said there was at least one thing you would change about this movie.
One thing, and it's a nitpick. It's not anything major. But in the scene where it's leading up to the big reveal the night before Andy's escape, and you're wondering what is coming. There's foreboding music. So something's going to happen. You hear it in Red's words in the
longest night of my life.
The voiceover, yeah. There's lots of indications that something major is about to happen, and you're thinking it's going to be bad. I mean, every indication they're worried that Andy's finally just given up, and this is it. And the movie up to that point doesn't give you any reason to believe that that's not the likely scenario. And it was storming that night. And as you're doing the voiceover, you get the the thunderclaps in the background. And later on, knowing that he escaped, you know that Andy actually used the thunderclaps in his escape to break the sewage pipe. He timed it. They show him timing as he's hitting it with the rock to so that he can crawl out. I think that those thunderclaps, if you go back and listen to it, and you have Red's voiceover that you're listening to, I don't think they're nearly loud enough. I think with the foreboding music, and when you get to that moment and it does kind of fade to black, and then you get to the scene in the morning where they're all coming out and reporting, coming out of their cell, and Andy doesn't step out. Right before that happens, before it goes to black, I think it would have been really great to have that thunderclap really loud, because it's like your worst, what you're realizing is about to happen. Boom, it happens, and you get it with a thunderclap. And then it also lends itself to where that thunderclap wasn't something bad, wasn't leading to something tragic, but it was actually a great thing because it helped in his escape. And I don't think those thunderclaps are nearly loud enough. They're very, very muted in the background, and I would have liked for them to be louder.
Yeah, I can see that. I like that. I like that sort of take on things. I think you're onto something. It does kind of play a little bit of a sleight of hand that's almost unfair. The poster is tacked back down. You don't get any, like, they're not cheating. Darabont's not cheating, but he gets really close to cheating with this reveal in order to tell a better story. Like, I'm not blaming him, but you're right. There was probably a way to highlight the thunderclaps, and then on a subsequent watch, you can go back and go, maybe even a clank in the back with that one loud and a clank would be kind of cool.
Yep.
Fair enough. I know that listeners and watchers might be like, hey, Phillip's got to talk about the fact that there are no women in this movie. No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't, because this is not a movie that lends itself to women characters. It just doesn't. If you were to make this movie in 2024, you would have to have a female character. There would have to be a prominent female character. I love the fact that doesn't diegetically happen. There's his wife, there's the pinup girls, and there's this one lady on the board, the parole board, and then the secretary at the bank. That's it. That's all the women in the whole movie. Because diegetically, that's the truth. It's a prison. There are no women in the prison. It doesn't work that way. So no, I don't have to say, well, there should be more women. There should be better roles. No, diegetically, it just doesn't work. Doesn't make sense. So nothing else though. I wouldn't change a whole lot about this movie. I think it's nearly a perfect movie. We've talked about one other that I thought was nearly a perfect movie, and that was Jurassic Park. It did what it was trying to do, and it did it really well. I think this is exactly the same thing. It did what it was trying to do, and it did it really well.
Yep. Agreed.
How it could have been different. Oh, Leo. We almost got a very different Shawshank Redemption. Almost.
Yeah.
I mean, almost. So Rob Reiner, who I think we've talked about on the show before, really good director. I think he gets a hard time now, and people kind of write him off as like a rom-com director. He's not that. Oh, I know we've talked about him before because we did Princess Bride, and Rob Reiner was the guy that did that. Rob Reiner is a really good director, and Rob Reiner loved this script that Frank Darabont created, and he wanted to make this movie. So much so that he was willing to offer Darabont a large cash payment, and he would produce any other movie that Darabont wanted him to produce. A blank check, basically. I will give you a blank check to make whatever movie you want to make, and I'll give you a large sum of money if you let me make the Shawshank Redemption. And Darabont didn't do it.
2.5 million.
Yeah,
to be exact. That's a lot of money.
When you've never directed a movie before,
Mhm.
and somebody wants to buy your script from you, make your movie, you're going to get residuals on that movie. It's Rob Reiner. It's a name. It's somebody that's, and some of the people he wanted to put in it. Like, I think the movie they're talking about, and so let's just go through. So Castle Rock would make the film. Rob Reiner would direct it. And he wanted to have Tom Cruise as your Andy Dufresne, Harrison Ford, or Robert Redford, depends on who you read or who you listen to about these rumors, as your Red. That's a movie that's gonna make money.
Yeah, that's probably a good movie, but it's a very different movie.
And if your name is attached as writer of that movie, you're going to make some residual off of that. You're going to see some money off of what that does at the box office. Rob Reiner, Tom Cruise, Harrison Ford.
Yeah.
And Darabont says, no, I'm making this movie. I wrote this script. I adapted this movie, and I'm making this movie. And he turns Rob Reiner down.
I tell you what, if it's 1994 all over again, and I'm at that Rolling Oaks Mall movie theater, and I see the poster up there, and I see
Tom
Cruise, Harrison Ford. I'm like, I'm seeing that one, no doubt about it. It's not just because it's the only movie that's in the time slot.
Absolutely. Like it is making its money back. And Darabont gets a piece of that because he writes the movie, so he's getting a piece of that. So he really had to have a real specific vision of what he wanted to see. And you were talking earlier, Leo, like Tom Cruise was signed on. He was on board. He was ready to go if Rob Reiner got the rights. They had worked together on A Few Good Men, had apparently had a really good chemistry and working relationship, and so Tom Cruise was ready to do it. I like Tom Cruise. I love Harrison Ford. It's a very different movie. The from Rob Reiner all the way down through Tom Cruise, Harrison Ford, or Robert Redford, depending on which one of those you put in there. It is a very different movie. I don't think it's a bad movie. I don't know that it's the classic movie that it is now. Very different.
Yeah,
movie.
Very different. I agree. And I don't think it's a classic. No.
James Palmer says he's not sure it works well at all.
Back in 1994, I mean, you say that thinking now, but I guarantee you that movie's probably not a bomb. It changes.
Oh no, it's gonna make this money.
The financial course of the film, because Shawshank Redemption didn't become success until after the fact in VHS rentals. That's where they really, really came up big, and then television.
Yeah, VHS, and then when Turner bought Castle Rock Pictures, Ted Turner bought it, and so he started throwing the Shawshank Redemption on because it was the perfect length to throw commercials into and have a 3-hour movie. You throw commercial breaks into a 2 hour and 12 minute, 2 hour and 22 minute. You throw commercial breaks in it, it breaks out perfectly to a 3-hour movie. And so on TNT or TBS, it for like 20 years, it ran 5, 6, 7 times a month on those stations because he owned it and didn't have to pay for it, and it fit perfectly into. And that's where a lot of people found it. That's where a lot of people love it is from TBS or TNT.
Bob Gunton said that he was making $100,000 a year off of the movie just from it being aired on television because it was on television so frequently. Yeah, on residuals.
Bob Gunton, which we did not mention in our incredible performances. is really, really good. Like Bob Gunton is another one of those guys that you've seen other places.
Oh yeah,
and you don't realize it. He was in Demolition Man, and some of those kind of things. Really good in this movie. He plays another quintessential Stephen King character, the religious person that is bad. That is a Stephen King trope, and Bob Gunton jumps right into that and does that really, really well. The other could have been, almost was, in fact, Leo, we talked a little bit about this before we started recording. Gil Bellows plays Tommy. Tommy is an integral character in the movie. He is the new convict that comes in, and Andy helps him get his GED, and kind of mentors the kid, and he's the one that reveals that he had a cellmate that ended up being the killer of Andy Dufresne's wife and lover. And this is the testimony that he would need to get out of prison. He's murdered by the warden and by Byron Hadley, all played by Gil Bellows. Gil Bellows does an incredible job, but the guy who had already had signed his paperwork, was going to be Tommy. It's a guy named Brad Pitt.
We'd be talking about him a lot.
So Brad Pitt, just to put Brad Pitt, I don't know if anybody our age should remember, but Brad Pitt went from being nobody to Brad Pitt like that. Like nobody knew who he was. Thelma and Louise and A River Run Through It happened, and all of a sudden, everybody loves Brad Pitt. Everybody loves Brad Pitt. He is the most, and this is right in that moment where Thelma and Louise and A River Run Through It have happened, and he is starting to get huge offers. He will a year later make Seven, the movie we just talked about. He is he goes from nobody, a bit part in Thelma and Louise, to a superstar within about 2 years, and maybe even a year. And this is right in the midst of that. So he had signed on to play Tommy in this movie. His career starts blowing up, and he goes, I'm going to buy myself out of that. I got another movie with Morgan Freeman I'm going to do next year. So I don't need to do this one. And so he doesn't end up, Gil Bellows ends up stepping in and playing Tommy, plays him really well. But what a different, again, another one of those things, Leo, that like if Brad Pitt is in this movie in this moment, it would blow up at the box, even if he's only in it. What's Tommy's in this movie for all of
like 10 minutes,
12 minutes, 15 minutes, maybe. Wouldn't matter.
Yeah.
It would have blown the box office out. It would have made this a box office success at that moment, to have Brad Pitt in it. And it would still be good. Like, we're not talking about this is Shia LaBeouf. And, it's that moment where Shia LaBeouf is really, really hot. And he winds up in the movie. And then every time you watch it 10 years later, you're like, that just takes me out of the movie seeing Shia LaBeouf.
I love how you use Shia LaBeouf as an example, because that's so good.
I couldn't think. I was trying to think of a guy that just got really hot in Hollywood for a minute, but now we look back and we're like,
why?
What were we doing? Like, what was that all about? This is Brad Pitt. He's a really good actor. He's a really powerful presence. Really good actor. It makes the movie better. Gil Bellows does a great job. This makes the movie better. And I don't think it even takes you out of the movie. It's just one of those things where you're like, yeah, Brad Pitt is in this. This was just before he took off.
Yeah. Hey, speaking of Brad Pitt and Shia LaBeouf, they were both great in Fury. So give Shia LaBeouf credit in that one. That was a great movie, but I love how you used him.
There was this moment that he was really, really popular. Like he was going to be the next thing. And now we all look back and we're like, what? Why were we so convinced that this was going to be the next Indiana Jones, the next, the next it guy. Shia LaBeouf. Interesting.
Yeah.
It doesn't help that he went a little
No. Yeah.
weird. Like that tends to be I could have used Nick Cage, I guess, because he kind of, although Nick Cage just realized how weird he was and just steered right into it. And he's like, okay,
he leaned
I'm
into
just
that.
going to be that guy. I'm going to lean right into this and be that guy and still do all the movies and all the things.
Yeah.
You had other names that were possible Andys or Reds. I think you mentioned that you had some other names. Who else?
Yeah, so for Red, what was trying to remember now, just slipped my mind.
Gene Hackman, I think, was one that got mentioned.
Yeah, Gene Hackman and I can't think of the guy's name right now. But okay, so Andy, I think actually one that could have pulled it off, quite possibly, and got offered the role and turned it down right before they gave it to Tim Robbins, Tom Hanks.
Hanks. So let's talk a little bit about that, because this is
pull that up.
There is this moment in Tom Hanks' career that I think we lose sight of right now, because we know Tom Hanks is Tom Hanks. But there is this moment where he's done like Big and Bachelor Party and Turner and Hooch and all of these kind of comic sort of things. And that's who Tom Hanks is. And then this moment, like 1994, 93, 94, is where he does this back-to-back thing where he does Philadelphia with Jonathan Demme, and then rolls right into Robert Zemeckis and Forrest Gump. And what I think is great about that is the order in which they happen for Tom Hanks's career, because Philadelphia is good. And Tom Hanks gives a really great performance that none of us knew he had in him, so he wins the Oscar. Then the next year, Forrest Gump comes out, and again, we can look back at it now with 2024 eyes, but you didn't have a choice. He had to win the Oscar. He was only the second person to win back-to-back Oscars in the Best Actor category, the others being Spencer Tracy, another guy who forced the Academy into it. If you flip those movies and he does Forrest Gump first, it's too comedic. If you don't see real acting chops on Tom Hanks, if he's the guy from Turner and Hooch and you watch Forrest Gump, you laugh at Forrest. You laugh at his stupidity. You come away with more of a comic idea of who this guy is. So I don't think Forrest Gump works as well. And then even if he nails it, Philadelphia comes out after Forrest Gump, he never gets to back-to-back Oscars, which end up catapulting his career into what he is now. Only because they were flipped the way they were. And Philadelphia happens first, and we all go, whoa, this guy has something, has some ability. Denzel Washington, Jonathan Demme, incredible movie, but not one that's just going to blow your socks off if you've already seen that side of Tom Hanks. It's really important the way this happened, but this is right in the midst of that, Leo, where he is beginning to select these roles that require more than comedic acting. They require some real acting chops, which, by the way, comedy is harder. Comedy is infinitely harder than Shawshank Redemption. Or Forrest Gump. Like, comedy is harder. Take it from a guy who thought he was going to make his career at some point in acting. I could do 5 plays like Shawshank Redemption before I would touch a really slapstick, farcical comedy. That's hard. That's hard work. Timing and chemistry and all of that come into play. You can take over a dramatic role and just be good despite what's around you and be noticed. You can't do that with comedy. Comedy has to be everybody firing on the right cylinders for it to be fun.
True. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but that is true.
I mean, watch Naked Gun sometime, one of the best comedies ever created, and then watch like Naked Gun 33 1/3, and tell me that it doesn't matter. That comedy's not hard. Comedy's hard. Comedy's really hard. But this is right in the midst of that. So Tom Hanks being Andy Dufresne in Shawshank Redemption would be something. So he's already doing Forrest Gump. That's the reason he isn't able to take
that's
it.
why he didn't do it.
So then we get John Travolta. I don't know if you knew this. I know this. John Travolta was their second choice for Forrest Gump. Talk about changing that movie a lot.
Wow. For Forrest Gump? Wow.
So you get Travolta in Forrest Gump, and you get Shawshank Redemption. Okay, so wait, we have to go deeper now, Leo, because I just realized if you've taken Tom Hanks and you put him in Shawshank, so you have to put John Travolta in Forrest Gump. Now you have to do something with Pulp Fiction.
Oh, yeah, because Pulp Fiction was at the same time.
Because he can't. This is all the same year. He can't make Pulp Fiction now because he's in Forrest Gump. So you have to redouble your efforts and go back and get Michael Madsen and bring in the original what the role was originally supposed to be in Pulp Fiction. Like
totally different Vincent Vega. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it would have been whatever his character is from Reservoir Dogs. It would have been that Vega character.
Yeah.
So it's amazing the dominoes that would fall by putting Tom Hanks in this movie. In a vacuum, Tom Hanks in this movie over Tim Robbins.
Tim Robbins.
I mean, I don't know. I would never say Tom Hanks couldn't do it. Tom Hanks can do just about anything.
I think it could work. I'm glad it didn't happen, but I think it could work. He's the only one that I could think. I mean, that wouldn't make the movie vastly different. I think he's the only one that could make it work and it still be the Shawshank Redemption that we know, or at least very close to it. By the way, actors that could have been Red, I now remember what my brain fart earlier. Paul Newman and Clint Eastwood were considered for that role. I could see either one of those guys.
Yeah, I mean,
who's going to do the voiceover? Certainly not Clint Eastwood. Like, no.
Clint Eastwood doing the voiceover. You're not okay with Clint Eastwood. Yeah. Hope is a good thing. Maybe the best of things. Yeah, you don't like Clint Eastwood? The gravel?
Not for the voiceover, no. I do like Clint Eastwood, but no, I don't want to listen to him.
You're talking and Clint Eastwood, so you're talking because I always like to place these people where they are in that moment in their career. So Clint Eastwood has just done Unforgiven. So that's where he is. That's the Clint Eastwood that you're getting is Unforgiven, kind of Clint Eastwood. Kevin Costner also offered the role of Andy Dufresne.
Yes, I did see that,
and didn't end up doing it. Others that might have been. This is always weird when you get into casting rumors because they start throwing out any and all names that were names. Then Johnny Depp, Nicolas Cage, Charlie Sheen, all considered for the role of Andy Dufresne. Don't like any of those. Not okay with any of those.
So
I like Johnny Depp. I like Johnny Depp. I'm okay with Nick Cage. I'm not a big fan of Charlie Sheen. I can't see any of those working.
So Charlie Sheen, I read that he wanted the role so badly that he offered to do it at a discount, or I think only like he was only going to get paid on scale of the movie. So like he was not going to be given anything up front. That's how desperately he wanted it, and they still turned him down. They were like, "No way, you're not going to be in this movie."
Pass, man.
Yeah, hard pass.
I'm pulling up his filmography because I'm trying to place like where this would be in his filmography. He has just done, see, 94. He's just done Terminal Velocity, The Chase, Three Musketeers, Hot Shot Part 2. He has a cameo in Loaded Weapon 1, a really weird kind of spoof movie. I mean, he's not doing anything crazy. He's I don't know. I see why they turned him down. Like now that I'm looking at his, like he's done Navy SEALs and Men at Work, Hot Shots.
Yeah, those
Hot
spoof
Shots Part
movies,
2, Three
Loaded
Musketeers.
Weapon
Like
1. Yeah,
I can see why they turned him down. And now knowing what we know about him, like it
Men at Work.
would take me out of the movie a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, hard to say that he wouldn't have changed and been a different Charlie Sheen, but
he was great in Major League. But
was great in Major League. I love
outside
Major
of that,
League.
yeah,
Great movie. I'm glad we got what we got.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really glad that it fell where it did. I think Morgan Freeman is just perfect, especially with the voiceover, and then Tim Robbins just, for all the things that I'm not, I was watching just a brief moment today, just watching some funny movie clips, and the alley fight in Anchorman popped up, and Tim Robbins shows up in that. Like he's one of the leaders of one of the stations, and I'm like, what is this guy? Who is this guy? Because I knew we were talking about him later today, and I was like, what else other than Andy Dufresne has he ever done that I'm like, that's Tim Robbins? And all I could come up with, Hudsucker Proxy comes out the year before this, and Nuke LaLoosh in Bull Durham is kind of a quintessential Tim Robbins role. What other Tim Robbins roles are there that are just like you have to make sure you see him in this,
I
don't know.
That's kind of a good question, actually.
He's in Top Gun. I forgot about that. He is in Top Gun.
He was in Top Gun, but that's not one of those where you got to see him in it.
No, not at all. Not at all. Howard the Duck. What a terrible movie.
Oh, he was in War of the Worlds. I forgot about that.
What a terrible movie. Yeah, just not a lot on this list. It's just yeah, not a lot on this list. Cadillac Man. He is the brainless sort of guy that holds the place hostage in Cadillac Man. Dead Man Walking, which I think is where he met his wife Susan Sarandon.
Yeah.
Shawshank Redemption, Bull Durham. Those are the only ones that I really immediately connect. Hudsucker Proxy too, of course. Yeah, so I don't know.
Yeah, nothing really great. Arlington Road. He's in High Fidelity. It was an okay movie, but yeah, that was definitely the highlight of his career, I guess, huh?
Maybe so. So where does this movie rank for you, Leo? I've made no secret. This is my favorite movie of all time. It beat out Usual Suspects. Usual Suspects used to be my favorite movie of all time. This has beat it out. I still really like Usual Suspects. It's one of my favorites. But this is probably my favorite movie of all time. I love what it says, what it has to say, and I think it's just nearly a perfect movie, beginning to end.
I have to put it top 5. Where it is in my top 5 just will depend.
Right.
Depend when you're asking me, but I don't think it'll ever drop below the 5th spot. It's pretty high. I'm certain there's a time where I would have told you it was number 1. But definitely top 5, one of my favorite movies. One of Dolores's favorite movies when I was watching it to prepare for this show. She's like, "Oh, that's one of my favorite movies." And I'm like, "Yeah, Phillips too. I think it's his all-time favorite.
It is.
Speaking of rankings, I read another interesting tidbit about this movie. It is the number 1 ranked movie on, is it IMDb?
Mm-hmm.
And do you know the story behind that? Did you read that? Did you?
No, I didn't. But
so, number 1 for a very long time was Godfather, right?
Sure,
And when
great movie, friggin' great movie.
When the Batman, The Dark Knight Returns came out, apparently there was a very large push by Batman fans because 1, yeah, it's a great movie. 2, there's Batman fans all over the world. A very popular character. So there was a push by Batman fans to vote down Godfather with the intent of putting Dark Knight Returns in the number 1 spot. They were successful.
Dark Knight or Dark Knight Returns?
Or maybe it was Dark Knight. Sorry, I keep saying Dark Knight Returns, but I think it was Dark Knight.
I would be okay with that. Dark Knight is a really, really, really good movie.
Yes. So they were successful in knocking The Godfather off of the top spot when they were voting it down, but they were not successful in getting The Dark Knight into the number 1 spot. I think it got to number 3 is what I read.
Yes, I think that's right.
But taking over number 1 was Shawshank Redemption, and it's been there ever since.
James Palmer asked, what are your 1 through 5? I don't write down the list because it changes and fluctuates. Shawshank and Usual Suspects definitely belong up there. Jurassic Park probably is in there or close to there in the top 5. The Sixth Sense would be somewhere close to that. And then funny that we just mentioned it, Dark Knight might be up there as well. Those are 5 movies. I think I just gave you 5 that would probably be somewhere in that pantheon. But those 5 that I just mentioned are near perfect movies to me. You can quibble about little things here and there, but Sixth Sense, Dark Knight, this movie, Shawshank Redemption, Usual Suspects, and Jurassic Park, I think are near perfect movies. There's not a lot I would change about any of them. I think they're very well done.
Yeah, I would agree with a lot of what you just said. I will have to add, though, to my top 5 would be the movie we're doing in the next episode, so I can't say the name. But I love that movie.
You'll love that movie.
I do.
So funny because when we set these movies out, didn't even have it on my list because it's been years since I've seen it. You mentioned it and put it on the list, and I'm like, oh yeah, I know that movie. It's, I used to watch it a lot when it first came out, and sure, it can go on the list. And then we started drafting movies, and I drafted this movie because it was my favorite movie of all time. And I was like, it's Shawshank Redemption. We're finally going to get to it. It's my favorite movie of all time. It's nearly a perfect movie. And you came back, and your next spot on the draft, you said, I am picking this movie for almost all the same reasons that you picked Shawshank Redemption. Interesting. I'm not sure how much we could say about it because I was telling you earlier that like almost anything I could hint toward would kind of give it away.
Yeah.
What was the one thing you brought up was what? Not powder blue. What is it?
Periwinkle blue.
Periwinkle blue. There's a hint.
It's almost like the color of my microphone, maybe. Yeah.
Almost. Yeah, almost.
If you're gonna buy one, make sure it's periwinkle blue.
If you're gonna buy one, make sure it's periwinkle blue. Yes. I'm excited to spend a couple of weeks with that movie. Actually, a week. I'm not gonna lie. We are getting together. Our next show should be. I got to pull up my calendar to make sure that I am right on the date. Our next show should be the 19th. Is that right? before we get into
Yeah.
Wild West. Dang, James Palmer
The
got it in
Wild
one.
West. Wow.
Yes, Leo's
My favorite movie of all time.
is the 2001 sci-fi western with Kevin Kline and Will Smith.
I love Will Smith
and
that
Kevin
much.
Branagh in the Wild West. You got it in one. Got it in one.
That's not even my favorite Kevin Kline movie.
Dave, if I give you my favorite,
Fish Called Wanda.
Fish Called Wanda is good. I love Dave. Dave is such a good movie.
Dave is good too.
Such a good movie. So we'll get together on the 19th and we'll talk about that movie, The Wild Wild West, as James Palmer already guessed it. We just got to give him his credit. No, it's not The Wild Wild West. It's different. It's a different sort of movie. It's different than anything else on our list. Although there are some connections to some of the things on our list.
Oh yeah. I hinted on that earlier in this episode, actually.
Yeah. I think at the period of time it came out, Madonna was a big fan of the movie. I think she really liked the movie. She's not in it, as far as I remember, but she liked it. She enjoyed it a lot when it came out. There's a hint. There's a really obscure hint, actually. You have to know a lot about that movie and who is involved in it to know why Madonna would really, really like that movie. Palmer says he knows. Shoot us a message offline. I'm really curious if you guessed it. So we will get together on the 19th and talk about that. And I am going to have to do some work on the road because I am taking a 5-day trip to Boston with my wife. Nice. Our first vacation. No kids, no job interview that we're going to, no visiting family, just a trip for the sake of a trip, an actual vacation for the first time in our 20 years of marriage that we are going to Boston for 5 days. We leave on Sunday. We fly out on Monday, and we'll be back. We fly back in on Friday, and then we got to drive back down on Saturday. So I'll have to watch this particular movie on the road, I think, and do some work on the road.
Wow, that's awesome. Lot to see and do in Boston.
And because I have not seen this movie in nearly 20 years, I have to actually watch it. We were getting ready for this show, and I told my wife I needed to sit down and watch Shawshank Redemption, and she goes, "Why?" You have that entire movie memorized.
You recite it in your sleep.
You're not wrong. I do, but I still have to watch it. And you know what? There was something. I didn't mention this. I should have mentioned this when we were talking about it. If you had told me, hey, Lolise, howdy. If you had told me that a harmonica plays a pivotal role in this movie before I watched it this weekend, I would have said, I don't remember that. It's important, but I did not remember anything about it until I watched it this weekend, and I go, there's a thing here with a harmonica that I never tracked, just never tracked for whatever reason.
Wow. Well, next time you watch it, you can look for the Albert Einstein picture with this.
Yes, I will have to.
Where he's mocking the warden.
I will have to look for that. So what more can we say? James Palmer did get it right.
Oh, he did? Okay.
Yep. He got it right.
I figured he might.
Absolutely did. He nailed it. James, if you want to come talk about that movie with us, let us know.
Yeah.
We'd love to have you on and join us on the 19th there when we gather together and talk about that movie. Not going to tell you which one. What else do we need to say about Shawshank? Hope is a good thing. Maybe the best of things. and no good thing ever dies. I love the quote. There's so many good quotes out of this movie, but I love this quote because you can't pick it apart too much. You can't say, well, good people die all the time. That's not what he said. He said good things never die. And hope, such an important thing. People who have lost all hope, I understand how people get to the moment where they take their own life, because if you did not have hope, if you had no hope left, I've been in some really down, dark, awful places in my life at times, usually just fleeting moments, thank God. But I always had hope that things would get better, that things would be better, that things could happen, and that this wasn't the end. But to have no hope, yeah, no, hope is a good thing, maybe the best of things, and no good thing ever dies.
100% agree. I mean, I can't, when you think about the character, I mean, just think about it. The guy was really good at what he did because he focused on his career. He even goes into that point later in the movie. His wife is killed. She cheats on him. His wife is killed. He's blamed for it. He goes to prison. He gets beaten up. He gets raped. He gets, he doesn't know if he's ever going to get out. No one believes him that he's innocent, even his own friends, within the prison.
Right.
And he never loses hope. Can you imagine going through all of that? And then he blames himself for his wife's death. He says later, I didn't pull the trigger.
I killed her.
But
he says, I killed her
because of who I was, because of, the husband that he was. So he blames himself for that, even though he didn't do it. And going through all of that, everything that he's gone through, and still being able to keep that hope inside of him. The quote about hope, and the one that I really like, Phillip, is where he's talking about the music with Red, and says you need it so you don't forget, and Red's like, forget, like he doesn't understand what he's talking about. And the quote is, he says, forget that there are places in this world that aren't made out of stone, that there's something inside that they can't get to, that they can't touch. That's yours. And then Red says, what are you talking about? And he says, hope. That's what he kept going and kept alive. And yeah, you're right. If you don't have that, yeah.
The other great quote that comes out of this movie, I know we're running long. We were actually wrapping up, but this is good conversation about this movie. The quote I think I've even seen tattoos of, and some people really grab onto, is get busy living or get busy dying.
Get busy dying.
How many of us, and again, this speaks directly to the institutionalized nature of Red, because he is doing neither of those things. He is not he is not actively working on living. He is not actively working on dying, on destroying himself. He is just resting in Shawshank Prison in this institutionalized sort of mindset of just being there. And Andy says, get busy living, get busy dying. And then Red later, as he is opening up his knife, there's the refrain, get busy living or get busy dying. And that's where you see Red was too. And he says, you goddamn right. Great moment. Just as he's walking out of the room and says, you goddamn right. That is absolutely incredible. An incredible moment in the movie. It's a great movie. If you've never seen it and we just ruined it for you, I'm so sorry. We warned you.
We told you at the beginning.
It's a great movie. If you have not watched it in years, go back and watch it. I mean, just go back and commit the 2 hours and 20 minutes or whatever it is and sit down and watch it. And really be present in it. Set your phone to the side and be present in the movies. I get so frustrated by my children who are adults or practically adults. I got one teenager and 2 adults, and I want to show them a movie. I sat down, I've mentioned it a couple of times. I sat down to watch The Naked Gun with them recently. And it's a movie you have to pay attention to because half of the jokes, 50% of the jokes in Naked Gun are visual.
Yeah.
And they're sitting there with their nose in their phone. And I just wanted to be that mean dad that's like, put your phones away and watch the movie I'm trying to show you. Get off my lawn. I didn't. I let them do their thing. They laughed at some of the stuff. They don't have the same appreciation for the Naked Gun that I do. But do that. Yeah, you really, for this movie, set your phone aside, really be present in the movie. It's got some great things to say. It's not all beautiful. It's not all a fairy tale. We didn't talk a lot about Boggs, the sisters, and Byron Hadley and the terrible, awful human being that he is, who just murders with impunity throughout the movie. It's not all pretty, but it's a really great movie. It says some really great things. So with that being said, Leo, you got anything else?
Nope. That sums it up.
Well, life's like a movie. Write your own ending. Keep believing. Keep pretending. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. And we'll talk about a new movie. Another great movie. We'll see you then. Adios, everybody.
Bye, guys. Thanks.